Welcome back, everybody. Our next and last witness of the day is John Graff. John, can you hear me okay over there?
I can hear you.
Great. John, could you state your full name for the record and spell your last name, please?
John Daniel Larry Graff, Graff as in Frank.
John, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. John, you're, of course, very well known at the NCI. You were a founding participant in the establishment of this organization in relation to some of the issues that you're going to talk about today. You are a Saskatchewan farmer. You've developed expertise in livestock nutrition, agricultural systems. You became president of an organization called the Living Streams Institute. You can tell us a bit about that. You have more than 3 decades of experience in livestock production, animal nutrition, agricultural research, and food system development. You've studied nutrition and agricultural engineering. You've received advanced training from an outfit called Albion Laboratories. You can tell us about that too, if it's sort of fits in with your evidence. You've worked as a livestock nutrition consultant since the mid-90s, and you've advised hundreds of farms and ranches across North America, being involved in beef, dairy, sheep, goats, swine, horses, cervids, fish, and other livestock species. You've served as an educator at a number of institutions where you taught courses in cattle nutrition and cow and calf management, ranch management, feedlot production. These institutions, we're talking about Olds College and Medicine Hat College, Montana State University, Washington State University, where you've given lectures and been invited to speak and share your expertise in those venues. My notes also indicate you became the president, chief operating officer, chief executive officer as well of an integrated agricultural production system combining crop production, livestock feeding, animal processing, biofuels, agricultural chemical manufacturing. And in that role, you've directed research, production, and engineering operations within a large vertically integrated food and energy system. Maybe you can tell us about that in a minute, what vertical integration of that entire food production process entails. And you've advised governments and international institutions with respect to agricultural initiatives regarding food security, livestock production, and agricultural developments. In other words, you've got immense experience over 3 decades in the areas that you're going to be speaking about today. And I know you have a presentation that involves slides, and I know you want to get to that. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get into your presentation?
No, the quicker we can quit talking about me, the better.
What's that?
The quicker we can quit talking about me, the better.
Well, you've got some significant credentials and an amazing background, so I think it's worthy of some attention. But John, why don't you start then, if it's your inclination, with your slideshow, and take us through your planned presentation. All right,
thank you, Paul. Well, thank you, everyone, and I'm proud of the NCI and what it's doing and accomplishing, and the team that we have, from Ted and all of the volunteers that are here. That it's making a difference, I think, in the world. And so I'm humbled to be part of the witnesses that are here. So I'll start into my talk. A lot of times I speak on a technical basis and that type of thing when I'm giving presentations about, in the past, a lot of times it was on nutrition and animal health effects, and a lot of the things that you're looking at with the CFIA and the things that are taking place when I worked in the veterinary world and consulting to them and to drug companies and stuff. This is what we dealt with, was the development protocols and looking for the vectors and the problems in the herds. But something that came about as I started to get into this and I started working further, I noticed that This wasn't about helping the farmers. What the systems being put in place, although each little piece could be discussed and talked about from a beneficial standpoint to the farmer, and I could argue it from that standpoint. And when I was in that world more, I would work on those beneficial aspects. But I started to see a pattern emerging that showed that we were not working for the benefit of the farmer, but rather to control the people. And as a consultant, I worked with large companies. I would advise them. There was another group of consultants out running around, Kissinger's Associates, and Henry Kissinger, he made the comment when he was dealing with food companies and dealing with banks, he said, who controls the food controls the people. And so that became a motto to some of these big farm organizations and processors who want to actually, their goal isn't to feed the people, it's to control them. He also said, and it should concern us when he is advising banks and companies and other organizations, governments, that the world population needs to be decreased by 50%. This is his words. He advises many corporations, or did advise many corporations. And he also said the elderly are useless eaters. And from that, we start to see that as he's advising them and looking at the economics of running countries, the economics of running economies, there's a mindset that's emerging that should concern us. So I want to look at what we see going on around us and at what they are planning and try to wrap all of that up into one thing. So I've established a little flow chart here that goes through all the other little pieces of it. First part I'm going to look at is identifying a potential animal health crisis. And this is something that we've seen time and again. And the aspects here of this establishment of a health crisis, we have to realize that all of our organizations, and I'm not sure if people understand, some of the people that we've asked to come and present here are producer organizations. And a producer organization, it has various aspects to it, but they represent the producers and are to try help the industry. So you'll have a cattlemen's association, you have an egg group, you have a dairy commission, you have all these different, there's grain commissions, there's all these different things. They receive government funding from the farmers. So every time, let's say if we're working in cattle, every time a cow or a calf or a bovine animal is sold, they go through an auction market, they go to a slaughter plant, they're traded, the government collects a certain amount, it depends on where they are, but let's say $2 per animal. Every single time. They might have 4 trades in their life, and that's 4 times that collection amount. That's collected by the government and then given to the Cattlemen's Association to fund their aspects of research, genetics, collect information on genetics, nutrition, even recipes to help drive the industry ahead, so that you can have a better steak, how to cook steak better, how to any of that thing related, how to graze animals better, vaccinations and that type of thing. All of that is driven from those dollars, as well as trade trips and junkets across to other countries, driven by that dollar. We think that, and then we as farmers, we elect delegates that then sit on these boards. And they manage the money, direct this, and help represent us and are advocates for us to the government. In my footnotes that you have are links, and we won't show it here, but I have links to an interview that I did with communications director of the Canadian Cattlemen's Association that says that our advocacy group, when they write an article, they write a message, a press release, they do research on vaccines or on healthiness of food, those reports, before they go out on the internet or released to the public, first go to the CFIA to be edited and changed to suit the government narrative. And then they're sent back and are sent out to you as propaganda. You have to recognize that, and all of your articles, and those go out into the newspapers, they're released to all these newspapers, and that is written and edited and directed by the government back to you. It's not the farmers any longer. It's a captured thing. And so you see things like this. Foot and mouth disease is a huge threat. And you can go through and you'll see the talking points trying to amp up the scare factor of these things. And like Teresa said, they're a terrible thing. But why don't we put that amount of energy into stopping the disease from entering the country as we do into crushing the farmer? I've heard politicians say we should never let a good crisis go. And so you see these types of things. Foot and mouth disease is identified as a very scary thing. The next part of this is the development of an unapproved treatment. Now, we've seen that over the last few years, how things are being developed. This slide shows a variety of different vaccines, of mRNA vaccines and their status. Now, this is a couple years old. They're still some of them are still in development, but you can see some are commercially available. Currently into pork, into chicks, into shrimp, into fish. Cattle have no current mRNA vaccine developed for them, but you can see right here in the middle of that where the Canadian CFIA is involved in the development of a foot and mouth disease and lumpy skin disease vaccine in Australia. It's not licensed, it's not complete, but they're just in their final, it looks to me like they're in their final testing phase of that vaccine for foot and mouth disease. And we'll use foot and mouth disease kind of as our disease that we follow through here this afternoon. Here is how our advocacy group writes on behalf, and this was written by that communications director, and this press release or this article was sent to the CFIA for adjustment to match with CFIA narratives. And you can see how it's calling for a vaccine bank for foot and mouth disease. You can see the nice little plug at the bottom for Animal Health Canada. It sounds like it's coming from a bunch of farmers, right? I wouldn't think so. So this is how it works. We have first a scare tactic. We have a disease that needs to be looked at. It's going to decimate the whole world. If we let it in, we do nothing to stop it coming in. And then we have to call for a vaccine bank to be able to treat the animals that are here. We wouldn't be calling for this if we don't think and don't intend to use it when the event occurs. And this is promoted by our cattlemen's associations as our best thought, but it was written by or edited by the CFIA. The next step in this is we hire animal tracking specialists. Now it's interesting, we've had brand inspectors for 150 years around here, but we need to hire new animal livestock inspectors. Article in the Western Producer, a major farm newspaper that receives many dollars from the federal government. Mr. Trudeau liked to spend money on newspapers and articles. He supports this one, and they are announcing the great arrival of a new RCMP officer in Saskatchewan to help with livestock investigations. They pose it as dealing with cattle rustling and that kind of thing. We've been dealing with cattle rustling since we had cattle, and we have a way to look after that. But the article goes on to say that this RCMP officer, this new livestock investigator, has a new role to the RCMP. There are already 2 of these in Alberta and 1 in British Columbia. Manitoba does not have one of these as of yet. They need to get one, they said. And the reason they need to is so that he can train the RCMP on how to track and look for missing animals or animals that are outside the system. They also are working with Crown prosecutors to ensure crimes of this nature, crimes of not providing good traceability to your animals, can be prosecuted. We have to ask why this has happened, since we've had, like I said, brand inspectors who are law enforcement officers, and they have been tracking animals and doing that kind of thing for many years. If we needed more, we can just hire more, would be my view on it. They track animals and ownership for the banks to enforce liens, that kind of thing, and it's been working well. And if the banks are happy, I would think everything else would be happy. But Alberta has had brand inspection since 1878. Saskatchewan really since 1943, but prior to that worked with Alberta. This is a combined Alberta-Saskatchewan brand book from 1907. There were thousands of brands on cattle back then. People might say, well, brands are injurious to animals. To some, not to all. There is a genetic subtype that as we stop using brands, we lose the selection pressure to expand that into our cattle herds, which we should have because it helps in a lot of other areas. But Saskatchewan and Alberta work together. British Columbia, since the 1870s, has been enforcing brands. Manitoba has a brand office and brands, but does not have inspectors. Eastern Canada does not have brand law of any kind. It's interesting to note all of those things when you start to look at the push to increase traceability, because these things have worked to track diseased animals within 48 hours all over the country, no matter where they are, and none get lost. Now they start recently then to start implementing new traceability controls. Started in 2000, right around the time of Y2K. We started with the health of animals regulations, and it just started the plan. It was an easy to chew first step. And so we all said, that sounds like a good idea. We'll go with that. It's not a big deal. It might help us with tracking down some animals. 2006, national traceability requirement was announced. It just kept moving on in slow little steps. 2013, they began engaging, they say, extensively with stakeholders, which brought swine traceability in 2014. And so swine and all of the pigs in Canada are supposed to be tracked on all of their movements, all of their activities on a 7-day basis, which is what the new regulations for cattle and everything are calling for. The reason you would put this into just one species is because you need to build up acceptance and a new generation of producers that will accept this as just a standard thing, and then you can move it into other animals. That's the way we would work it. CFIA actually identifies 31 diseases, among them as foot and mouth disease, avian flu, tuberculosis, BSE or mad cows, as critical dangers and reportable diseases that must be tracked. And if you see any symptoms that would relate to that, you would report to the CFIA. Not a bad idea if they're going to cause harm to our system. They're not new diseases, and we've dealt with these things before. All of these diseases have been traced using old traceability systems. No problem whatsoever. We have a system. We have a network of people. We don't have just one policeman in the province. We have, just in my area, I probably have 4 or 5 brand inspectors just in my local area. And they're real men with real boots, and they put their pants on just like the rest of us, and I think that might be the problem. They don't wear skinny jeans. The CFIA states that it needs to know movement of all animals, including historic regulation. Our historic regulation is that you have to do manifesting. So it's every farmer that has cattle will have this little, I think it's in 5 parts, 5 carbon copies. The carbon is always getting all over your hands. If they wanted to improve something, maybe go to carbonless copies so we can save the whole environment, right, from carbon. But it's manifested movements, so we write out there all of our information of where we're going, what information about the livestock, and we have to have that in our vehicle when we move, when we're on the road. It's there identifying everything. When you get to your destination, you leave a copy, and there's a requirement for 5-year keeping the requirements of those documents for 5 years. That is how we've tracked animals through all the prior animal health emergencies. I was down in the U.S. when Mad Cow started. I was in the head brand office in Idaho where the Mad Cow animals went through the border. I seen their system, and it is just a matter of paperwork tracing, and they start at the destination. So they start at the person who receives the animal and is identified, and then they track it. That shows who it came from. They go there, to where it came from, and all the way back to the source. That works. It's worked before, it'll work, it currently works, and if you talk to a brand inspector, they laugh at all this other stuff. It won't work, they say, and it isn't used. I was talking to one of the the farms that were depopulated that was concerned on testifying here, and they would not, when they were depopulated, the CFIA did not use the existing RFID and electronic tagging system that they've been imposing since the early 2000s. Those were not used. They did a manifested search. And currently, when your animal hits the slaughter plant, all of this traceability stuff that we talk about and that we're forced to do for the past 20 years, it stops. And then the packing house uses their own system from there on, and there is no connectivity. You cannot track it back in most packing houses. Like if you go to Costco or any of these places, the meat can't be tracked. But they're demanding that for the last 20 years, and they're wanting to increase it. The CFIA states that it needs to know movement within 7 days. They want to track it in a 7-day real-time paradigm. We would, like I said, in the past, we would track back. If there's a problem, start your tracking back. Now they want to start at the beginning, and they want to eliminate all retained paperwork. CFI states that that they need new geographic paperwork or new geographic IDs. It's in place in most places in the West, called a premises ID. It's not used in the East yet, but even without that, we've been for 100 years using land location numbers to identify exactly where you are. I'm not sure why a PID, which is only related to your home address, to your main location, not to your different pastures, why you would want to do that if traceability was your actual reason. Now, CFIA wants to more intrusive livestock identifiers. We've had for 20 years RFID tags. There's these little round buttons that have a radio signal in them. You use a scanner. You have to be closer than the light away from the RFID tag in order to get it scanned. They are wanting and that's one of my concerns, probably my main concern in the regulation, is this little line where they want to open it up for more efficient and effective identifiers. That means UHF, and if you look through the Canadian Cattlemen's Association, they're promoting the development of UHF tags. I wonder where they get that idea from. But the UHF tags can be read from an airplane or from a satellite of where your animals would be. So real time, without you identifying anything, and then if they ever want to come find your animals, you don't even have to be around. They know. The proposed regulations are burdensome. The only people that can really handle these would be a feedlot with a lot of animals, and they currently already use a lot of these technologies just in their operations to track the animals within the feedlot. But for cattlemen and people out in the pastures, it's going to be a nightmare. They have to use a computer to put these things in, and a lot of the cowboys and stuff don't like these computer machines. It's 17% of all farmers don't even have internet, so I'm not sure what they're going to do. And they still run flip phones. This is from the Gazette. It is the regulations that have been proposed. They have not presented the second reading or the second installment in the Gazette. My concern comes here in part 2. Part 1 is they're adding cervids, they're adding goats to the aspect, but part 2 has existing traceability requirements are modified by introducing movement reporting requirements for all ruminants, shortening the reporting time requirements for cattle, bison, and sheep, introducing requirements for the identification of the premises, and where it moves from being a provincial mandated thing to a federal mandated requirement for premises identification. And then the one that I'm really concerned about is amending indicator requirements to improve the collection of information and to allow for innovation and flexibility. Innovation is not for the farmer, it's innovation for their benefit, so that they can collect the information without you around and know where everything is happening in real time. And then update the regulations to increase agility and efficiency by, again, modernizing the requirements for the use of approved indicators. You see how they come in twice. They want that. It's a big deal to them. They list it twice. And then repealing the record-keeping requirements, which is these manifests that you have to keep for 5 years right now that actually work. So once you get your traceability in place, you have a disease that you're getting everybody scared of. You have specialists and you have the people and manpower training the police, not your common sense cowboy who knows how to track and read an animal and identify between a Hereford and a Simmental. Once you have those in place, now you move into something that kind of blows a lot of people's minds, is building animal mass burial locations. We became aware of this in Saskatchewan, where they issued contracts for the construction and the operation of 4 large-scale animal burial sites. We didn't know exactly what it is, but we looked into it a little more, did a little more investigating, and we found something that concerned us, but we couldn't really talk about it because we had no secondary backup to it. But that happened. We knew what we should be looking for, and so we were looking for that. And then the government made a misstep. They sent out and they were looking for places to put these burial pits in, identifying the underground soil conditions that would be good, the right amount of clay, not on a gravel base, not beside a creek. They sent a geotechnical truck that drills the ground to see what's under. They sent it down into a slough right beside the creek, about 30 miles from where I live, oddly. It was found out, and the townspeople locally that pull their water from that creek got up in arms that there might be a burial site there of all these diseased and sick animals that might happen around the country, and they might need to put that right beside their water. They were just feet away from the water source. That got everybody upset, so the government issued a press release telling them not to be afraid. Don't worry about this. We're not going to destroy your water source because the proposed site is not intended for the disposal of diseased or infected carcasses and would be for emergency situations only. Interesting. If it's not for diseased and infected carcasses, what would it be for then? Healthy animals. Why would you need massive burial pits for healthy animals? It could be used, they go on to say, for a burial pit for livestock should a mass cull event occur. This is their words. They're calling for and preparing for a mass cull event of healthy animals. This is the charts that they use for determining how they're going to bury and deal with animals in a mass cull event. It goes from rendering, which is impractical for a mass cull event, might work in small groups. They'd look at on-site disposal, which would have been a problem, but in the case of the ostriches, they would have been there with excavators to bury them. And they like that option when it's dealing with just single farms, but not when they're dealing with many farms that have to be all disposed in one place. So that for that, they would look at a central burial site, and that is where, if you see in the first column, it calls for a geotechnical investigation is required prior. That's what this truck was trying to do there by the little town of Wawota, looking for what is under the ground to make sure that things don't leach in. I do believe they will not destroy the water sources when they do this. They will protect the water sources and the environment that, from that standpoint. So that was one option, and that is the option that they are proposing here in this system. And we're looking for a place on Crown land that they could build a burial site, and that's what we've seen. Incineration is one. Landfill burial, that's what they tried in the case of the ostriches. They wanted to come to the landfill because it's too compacted here in a lot of the areas in BC along the valleys. A lot of your soils are not suited for burial. So they went first to a landfill, and the people were able to push back on this and convince the landfill operators not to accept the animals. It was successful for a while. Incineration at the end, and I think you would see some of that on farms where a disease is found. They would look at that. The interesting part down here on the bottom of the second page, it would show the capacity of this will vary according to a number of variables. An estimate is presented for comparison, but they're requiring the operator to have excavators that will move 65 cubic yards per hour of dirt, working around the clock. So they're preparing for a lot of animals to be hauled in. In their design works that I've seen, they do not have live animal unloading, so they'll be killed on farm and then loaded into probably gravel trucks and hauled here and dumped into the pits or the trenches. The trenches that they describe here are 4 meters deep, 2 meters wide, and spaced 10 meters apart, set back 100 meters from the fence boundaries. So they're massive, they're long big trenches, side by side that they will be burying in. Now the capacity of these is described here as if we go to central location, look at the fourth column, you see 115,000 tons per quarter section of dead carcasses is what they will do. 115,000 tons. One full-grown cow is approximately half a ton. And if you're looking, these would be used for pigs, cattle, sheep, deer, goats. Those would be the primary animals that would be buried in these. And so it'll be a mixture of species, because in the case of foot and mouth disease, it affects all of those animals. If it was some of the other diseases in those 31, it may only affect one species. But in this case, it affects all cloven-hoofed animals. So when you have 4 of these in a province, and most provinces have these plans, just we haven't had evidence. They don't want you to know that this is taking place. We had evidence of this in Saskatchewan. This looks after a massive amount of the animals that are in each province. If you took just one species, you're looking in the 50 to 75% of all the animals in the province through the 4 locations. And then more if they go into second quarter sections in any of those areas. Once you have these animal burial pits planned or ready, they don't have to start the digging, because the digging, as you can see, is 65 cubic feet per hour working around the clock. They just have to have it identified and contracted. Once the killing starts, they can be operational within a few hours. They'll have the plans and it's ready to go. The next aspect is you have to create the health crisis. And we all wonder if that is something that will happen. But when you call somebody like the Cattlemen's Association, they say that the threat of foot and mouth disease, when you talk to the president, talk to the chairman as we have done, they say it's imminent. It's an imminent crisis. So get ready. And if we keep allowing people to enter, as Teresa said earlier, without sniffer dogs for sausage or meat particles, which can carry foot and mouth in with it, if we don't stop those at the border, it'll eventually will come from the countries that have it right now. So creating the health crisis is quite easy with our current situation in our border aspects. You can see here from the CFIA's own site, they say they give their plan. This is from their site for the commissioners. If you get a copy of this, the links are listed at the top. If I'm taking screenshots, you can, and for anybody that looks at the video, you can get the links to this through looking at there. Quarantine and control movements of suspect animals. So they will come in once they have suspect. Remember Mr. Lee's presentation where he says it's suspect. It is not proven. Upon suspecting animals, they will quarantine and control movements, animals, products, and byproducts. We've seen that at the ostrich farm as well. They will perform tracing activities to quickly identify all exposed premises and potentially exposed high-risk animals. They can do that currently with the manifest system. They want to make it so they can do it from a computer board pretty easy using these updated new tags. They will put in place surveillance activities to quickly detect any new positive cases, and then they will stamp out affected animals in order to avoid further spread. So those animals that are found to be suspect will be dead quickly. Now, if they are carrying the disease, we could probably accept that in a lot of cases. But when they do not test for it, when it is suspect, I think that puts an unreasonable burden on the farmer for the lack of vigilance in our border controls and our immigration policies. Then once we get there, then they will use foot and mouth disease vaccination if and when required, that they are calling for a 30 million dose vaccine bank to be established, which our government is now establishing. They did pass the legislation to fund the vaccine bank. But this is their plan for how they're going to deal with it in the future. Now, once you have this, if you have an mRNA vaccine, it's not been licensed, it's not approved, but the CFIA itself is working at developing it, is funding it through various agencies in Canada. They're developing it overseas. Then you can see what we've seen just a few years ago, an emergency use authorization without the proper testing. Or they could use regular style foot and mouth disease vaccines that are currently in this new vaccine bank, and they can start applying those. It's interesting that the whole purpose of this whole aspect is to protect our export markets, where Canada exports, in the case of beef, more than 50% of our beef is exported. We just don't have the population base for all of the animals that we've got. Our country is suited in a lot of places to animal production, so we have to rely on an export market. So if we go ahead with this emergency use, it says emergency vaccination. This is again from the government on the CFIA's own site, if you can dig through and find it. The link is at the top. Emergency vaccination has to be a temporary measure, and then all of the vaccinated animals must either be slaughtered, which is commonly called vaccinate to kill strategy, or inventoried and subject to movement restrictions for the duration of their lives, which is commonly called vaccinate to live, where then everything is digitally ID'd and unable to travel and move. It sounds like another species that they've been talking about recently that was vaccinated in the recent past and now being digitally ID'd and restricted in movements, if you can think of a species that way. Once they put that in place, the animals that they've vaccinated, which like you've seen in Teresa's presentation, is a large area. What they are stating is that it is a quadrant of the province. So 1/4 of the province would get vaccinated where these animals are found to be sick. That's a lot of animals. They have a burial pit for each quadrant. But once they are not eligible for the food system, it says, and they recognize this, their purpose is to protect our export markets. Upon vaccination, it says, we would be unable to export certain commodities to our major trading partners since most industrialized countries, including the U.S., restrict imports from countries that practice foot and mouth disease vaccination, even if they can prove they do not have foot and mouth disease. It's almost impossible to prove once you've vaccinated that the animals do not have it because they are building antibodies for it. The same as if they had the disease, the same markers show up in the vaccinated animals. And so your testing procedures are thrown out. Every animal has to be considered sick. So they can't be exported. And with only 40-some million people in Canada, we do not have room for all of those animals in our food system. So then you must cull those healthy animals, and they're tracked so that they cannot be hidden by people who call their animals by name, or by people who can identify children's life steps through life by a certain animal that they led into a 4-H pen. Or, our son was born on the day that cow calved, and that little heifer is the same age as our son. Those types of things we can't hide those animals any longer. So they have to be culled. We see that happening and how they are heartless in these situations, like talking to, as Teresa said, talking to a stone. This article in the Western Producer, and there's many articles you can look up, as one of the families that we were hoping would testify that have not been paid for their 2,000 head of cattle from last March. They killed the calves that should have been sold then. They killed the cows. Those cows have not been replaced because they haven't been paid, so they lost the calf crop that was going to calve last year that they would have sold last fall. They lost that calf crop, and now those cows still haven't been replaced, so the calf crop they would have now is non-existent for sale this fall. So 3 calf crops lost plus 2,000 animals. It's millions and millions of dollars that this family is just all of a sudden in suspense about, just animated suspense, having to keep operating with their insurance and their land payments and the machinery payments, all of those things. Where do they get living costs from? Because just maintaining the operation takes all of their time. What are they going to do? And the CFIA is negotiating a lower price than what they are telling us all. The CFIA says they pay from $4,500 to $10,000. That's not what they're offering the farmer. And they scare you that if you fight back, you will be charged with all of the costs. We won't pay you. And so you're supposed to shut up and take it. And most farmers what they do is they shut up and they take it. And they suffer then for the rest of their life trying to get back from the money that they lost because the government decided to come in and kill untested suspect animals. You can look it up. We see the same thing happening to the ostriches. When it's animals that are untested, only suspect, we can't justify that as a society. To make certain people bear the brunt of stupidity. But we do. We as farmers feel ashamed that we failed to look after our animals, that we failed our neighbors, that we may have caused a destruction of our industry, that we love our industry. When you see people who go to work in the day and they go to work and they complain about their job, we don't complain about our job. We do it because we love what we do. And I don't think the CFI understands that people who will go out in 40 below to save baby calves, that will jump into rivers to save drowning animals at the risk of their own life, we will do that like that over and over and over. How dare they kill them without testing? How dare they? Once you've killed all the animals, what happens? If you're talking about killing 50 to 75% of a province's animals, and it is something like foot and mouth disease that is hugely transmissible, this won't happen in one province. You realize that cattle from Saskatchewan, baby calves from Saskatchewan, are put on trucks, hauled to London, Ontario to be fed there on corn that's growing in London, Ontario. Then they're put back, when they're slaughtered, they're put back on trucks and driven out to Alberta and slaughtered in Brooks and High River. That transfer of those animals and everything that they go through, and they have to be unloaded at Thunder Bay and rested and fed. And animals are coming in and coming out of Thunder Bay, and they're dropped off here and dropped off there, picked up. You can understand the transmissibility issues that we're worried about. But to kill them without testing, without issues, a food shortage occurs. Our animal proteins are gone, and there is a requirement for something to fill that void in our diet. Well, just wouldn't you know, Health Canada and the CFIA has approved a yeast-derived bovine protein. They say it's identical to regular beef. They've just approved as well the same type of protein to be used to replace pork and chicken. They also have just approved a beta-lactoglobulin protein, a milk protein from yeast. And it's interesting. Well, I want to just, our great government that is protecting our food systems, they state in their report, and the way this works is they start with a very common yeast, just a normal yeast. There's no concerns over this yeast. It's already used in many things, so they say there is no concern for the donor organisms. That's kind of eminent or scary. Donor organisms used in developing the production strain. They insert a gene expression unit for proteins of interest within the loci of the alcohol oxidase genes. So there's genes that help in the production of alcohol. They want to change that from alcohol into other aspects. So this is now a genetically modified yeast. You would think we would want to test this genetically modified yeast, wouldn't we? There were no concerns raised with the genetic modification of the methodologies and construct designs, so the needles and stuff that they used to do the modification, how they bred it out, they have no concerns with that. The expressed protein of interest is the beta-lactoglobulin variant B of cow, Bos taurus, so it's producing the same chemical agent. They have to subject this yeast to a bunch of chemicals in order to induce it to go produce this protein. This protein is a mainstay in animal domestic food production when it comes from animals. What this is saying, it is the animal-derived beta-lactoglobulin, which is a milk protein. It is a mainstay. It's beef when it comes from, or it is milk when it comes from a milk cow. They have no concern with this gene donor source from a safety perspective. The condoms were optimized for expression in the host yeast strain, but this resulted in no change to the primary amino acid sequence relative to bovine beta-lactoglobulin. They were assured this by the scientists that developed it and the guys who owned the company. There's no problem with it. They assured our government there's no problem, really. Trust us. The expression regulation elements were derived for the alcohol oxidase locus from this yeast. They never tested the genetic modified yeast. What they did, although the beta-lactoglobulin evaluated was extracted from cow's milk, rather than from the fermentation or from the yeast of a production organism, they used cow's milk in the tests to determine whether or not this new genetically modified production had safety and toxicity concerns. They used cow's milk, not the product that they are producing for the human market. When they went through if you read through the article, you'll also find that when they did the chemical pollutant, they wanted to see what else, make sure there was no lead, no mercury, all those types of things in the product. They never tested for the chemicals that were induced in or used to induce that. They have this other list of chemicals they looked at, not the ones they put in. So it's safe, right? They have a product that is going to be able to replace the void left in our food system with all the destruction. They can produce these in vats, in tanks, in a warehouse, in a single location, and Henry Kissinger's view of controlling the food controls the people can actually happen. How do you control a bunch of farmers? You can't control them. Let me tell you, you can't control me. Ted tries. But you can control a factory with some tanks. Massive tanks that this would be. And why would you want to do that? Because whoever does it will make a lot of money. A lot of money. And these companies, whether it's the simulated meat companies, they are owned by Bill Gates, Google, Tyson Foods, Asian investors, BlackRock, and Vanguard are the companies that own these simulated meat companies. The milk protein companies are owned by an Israeli group and various milk companies around the world who know these milk companies, these Tyson Foods, like you would think Tyson Foods is in the beef and pork business. Well, and chicken business. Well, they've been shutting down chicken plants and replacing them with cricket plants. It's been now almost 2 years, I think it is. There's a lot of money to be made by the people who are positioned and have helped encourage our government regulators to see things the way they see them. But how does that happen? The Canadian Food Inspection Agency, the Government of Canada, and Health Canada are involved with an organization called Gavi. It's the Vaccine Alliance. If you look at it, it says Canada and Gavi, through the Health Canada, are long-term partners. Canada has been a member of the Gavi board since its creation. The Gates Foundation is a founding partner of Gavi. And when you take a look at who owns big stakes, I guess that's kind of a pun, in this organizations, you can see the connection. Big money to be made here. And they've told us what the plan is. We can think, well, you're crazy. You're just some conspiracy theorist. And I'm like, no, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a coincidence theorist. It's just a coincidence, right? But there was a bill recently put to our federal government, Bill C-293, first reading in 2022, 2024 was the third reading. It passed and was moving toward becoming law, and then died because of the election. It was saved from that. But in it, it revealed to us the intentions and goals of our government. It says, the Minister of Health must establish a pandemic prevention and preparedness plan. Must. The pandemic preparedness, and remember, the Ministry of Health is who oversees the CFIA. The pandemic preparedness and prevention plan must, after consultation with the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, the Minister of Industry, and provincial governments, provide for measures to reduce the risks posed by antimicrobial resistance. When you look through what they're trying to do in all of the different pieces, they are talking about preparing for a world without antibiotics. Antibiotics are bad, but how do you treat an actual disease if you do not treat it with an antibiotic? We could go with natural health products and that kind of thing, but the budget a couple of years ago made that illegal. So if you take away all of the things in our toolbox, what are they leaving us with? Vaccinations and genetic manipulation. That's the only things we have left. Regulate, the second thing, they will regulate commercial activities that can contribute to pandemic risks, including industrial animal agriculture. And if you look into what the scope of industrial animal agriculture, you might think it's those great big feedlots, those great big dairies, those great big farms. But when these same groups of people come and try to impose new land use permits and new bylaws in our municipalities, they pose that as being things above 3 chickens. Above 3 chickens is all you're allowed for home use. Above that is industrial animal agriculture. And what is regulation? I tell a lot of the people at my seminars and stuff that regulation is death by a million paper cuts. That's what they intend to do, is regulate you to death. But never fear, they will not leave you starving. They will promote the commercial activities that can help reduce pandemic risk, including the production of alternative proteins. So they will fund, develop, and help these companies, those major companies, produce the proteins that they are going to take out of our diets. They're telling us what they're going to do. Whether this is crickets or this is the yeast-based proteins, they're telling us what they will do. And the fourth thing is they will phase out commercial activities that disproportionately contribute to pandemic risk, including activities that involve high-risk species. So chicken barns, dairy barns, feedlots, anything where you have what they deem to be a high-risk species will be, in their words, phased out. We can see what their vision is for Canada in the future. They have if you go to a thing called Policy Horizons Canada, this is the government's website that tells you what they want for the future of our Canadian people. It's crazy stuff. There are things where they talk about, we'll all be transhumans and all this type of stuff. That's their goal. They say it. You can go to the website and look it up. But here they also say that we will be promoting cellular agriculture, which creates bioidentical animal products, such as seafood, meat, and dairy, in a lab. This is the goal of our Canadian government. This involves culturing animal cells in a bioreactor and growing them into fat and muscle tissue. That's lab-grown meats. It's not the yeast meats. It's different technologies. But they like to use these lab meats where they use stem cells that they take from dead cattle or whatever species. They kill a pregnant cow, for example. They kill 150 of them. Take the stem cells from 150 fetuses inside the dead dairy cow. They take that to the lab and they use that to grow 2 pounds of beef. That's smart. Now, they're going to get that more efficient. They're going to get that down from 150 to maybe they'll get it to where they only have to kill 30 cows to get 2 pounds. But that's what this is talking about. They talk about here 3D printing the meat. Lab-grown beef burgers are approaching cost parity with traditional burgers because have you been to your grocery store lately? You see how the price of beef has increased. Have you seen any feedlots with empty pens because there aren't cattle left? That's what they say, is that there is a lack of animals, the lowest number of cattle on record. Go find a feedlot that can't buy cattle. Go find a packing house that is shut down because there's no cattle. I challenge you. Go find one. Doesn't look very good, but there is ways around it. But don't think that just your meat is at risk. Today it's control of livestock. Tomorrow it's control of other types of foods. This is fairly current aspect. Government of Canada, again, they're doing the same consultations that they did in the livestock sector back in 2017 through 2022, something like that. They're now doing that on grains to determine, in this case, the seed regulations so that they can control seed from a CFIA standpoint. They're coming for your food. There's ways. One of the things we in the NCI want to try establish are solutions and recommendations. How do we make recommendations? Some of this is common sense. Solutions, one, for the people. It's going to take people, consumers, farmers. The farmers need to go to their stock grower reps, to the organizations that are supposed to represent them. They need to put pressure on those boards to force government liaison people, those people that go between the board and have an incestuous relationship with political parties and our government. We need to stop and have them to quit and get out. They have to resign. There is no room for these people in our industry. When they let political direction dictate, political direction and greased palms direct the livelihood and the futures and the food that we eat. We need to educate our community. There's several campaigns going to write petitions. You have to sign. I'm trying to get a petition going. You can look it up. This is what we're looking at. Putting all of the pieces together of what's happening to our food system. Thank you.
That's just a ton of information, John, and really well done in terms of connecting quite a complex flow of information, but the way you've presented it is very impressive. And just for the viewing audience, of course, this slide presentation is uploaded as an exhibit, so you've done a lot of footnoting and references to things
Yep.
which the public can revisit by going online and seeing this as an exhibit to your testimony.
Correct.
So at this juncture, I'm going to turn you over to the commissioners, who I think may have a few questions for you. Okay, you done? Okay, well, let me ask you a couple before we let you go, because we are up against the clock, so our timing is pretty good here. The synthesized food products, these yeast-based proteins that are created in labs, all intended presumably to replace the farm-based food production system that our country has had forever, and we all have learned to understand and appreciate. Is that happening in other countries as well? Can you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is, and you see the same thing going on in the U.S., in Europe. The yeast milk product is developed in Israel, and they have restaurants now that are all on this type of food. It's already common in the meats. The milk products have just hit like Canada right now, but it's been in other countries. It's a newer technology, but it is rolling out. Kentucky Fried Chicken and some of those have been. They're developing tenders, chicken tenders out of this. Yeah, a lot of the fast food restaurants are using a hamburger made from this.
Okay, one of the slides you showed us involved an organization called Gavi, where you showed that, and the government of Canada has claimed to be a partner in that
on
organization,
the board of directors.
And the Gates Foundation, another big player. With does Gavi stand for something? Is that an acronym for something?
Yeah, is it Global Association of Vaccine, something like that? Yeah.
Okay, so are you aware, was that just done through orders in council and some sort of internal ministerial administrative channel, or has there ever been an active debate in the Parliament of Canada which would establish Canada as a partner in this organization with the Gates Foundation?
I do not believe that it has been debated in Parliament, but I could have missed that.
I mean, it seems to me an obvious thing if we live in a parliamentary democracy, and something as huge as being a partner with other interests in the evolution of our food industry towards the goals of Gavi. One would think that would be raised in Parliament and perhaps the legislative assemblies of the across the country, because obviously this is a huge change in the way we produce our food, and so impactful on the agricultural sector. Do you have any thoughts on why this hasn't been launched into the public realm in a very visible fashion? Because it seems to me a huge concern.
I would agree with you. It's a huge concern, and it's circumventing the people in every shape and form. But to do what you're proposing would interfere with profits on a lot of these big companies. So
this is just another instance of regulatory capture driven by monetary interests, and where it seems the public input and even just the public awareness of what's going on, has been displaced by those other interests.
I would guess so. I would like it. It sounds kind of funny, but I would hope that's actually the case, because otherwise we would be looking at probably describing this in mass murder or some other more nefarious aspects. You can't get into this realm of destroying food systems like this without questioning what the motive is.
So I guess the safe assumption is that it's money-driven, and that way, not necessary perhaps to delve into speculation as to more...
That's the easy thing to point to here. That's the easy thing to point to and deal with.
Right. Well, John, we're right up against 6 o'clock almost. So if there's anything else you wish to add to finish off your evidence today and sort of sum it up or leave us with any words of wisdom, now's your chance because we're going to be shutting down in a minute.
Well, I hope that the people that hear this and take part in looking at the NCI's presentations or evidence that's been put forward now and in the future realize that if this really lands in their lap, the government is not going to look out for you when the squeaky wheel is these other corporations. It's up to the people to be able to stand up and to make their voices known and what they want. I hope and I pray that our governments will listen to the people, listen to what's been said here today over the last 3 days. It's the only way to keep us out of what's to come.
Okay, John, thank you so much for your evidence today. But I also want to thank you for being so involved in this organization that has sounded the alarm on so many fronts and raised this very important topic. You're one of 5 directors whose collective wisdom has brought us here today to focus on the question of are farmers safe in Canada, and we're very grateful for the role that you've played in this organization, as well, of course, for the evidence that you've given us today.
Well, thank you. We have a really good team. The board is just wonderful people, and the volunteers are what make it, and all of the donors out there. It's one of the only places you can see something like this: citizen-funded, citizen-led, independent investigations.
Well, all of us are hugely grateful. So thanks so much, John.
Well, thank you.